សមាជិកគណៈបានសង្គ្រោះជាតិប្រាជ្ញាប្រធានសាមគ្គីក្រុមនានាសង្គ្រោះបម្រើការពារកម្ពុជាខ្មែរព្រមគ្រប់គ្នាទាមទារសិទ្ធិសេរីឯករាជ្យបូរណភាពអធិបតេយ្យខ្មែរប្រស្រីបដូរផ្ដាច់ថែរក្សាមិនឲ្យបរទេសឈ្លានពានមកត្រួតត្រាសម្បត្តិដូនតាធនធានជាតិខ្មែរ
Welcome and thank you for joining our show today. My name is Linda Wu. This show is called Khmer Youth Voices for Justice. This is part of the CNRP America live TV shows. Today is Tuesday, April 6, 2021. Before we start, please help to support our petitions, ending impunity for justice in Cambodia. Your support is very important. Please join me, ending impunity for justice in Cambodia at change.org. Together we fight to end impunity. Together we hold Hun Sen responsible for continuing to kill and hurt Cambodians. Until now, hundreds of victims have never received any justice. Please watch a short video clip by Her Excellency Mu Sokhor describing ending impunity for justice in Cambodia. Thank you.
Between 1975 and 1979, the green rice fields of Cambodia became the killing fields of Cambodia. Over 2 million lives were lost, including the lives of my own parents and many of my relatives. The Khmer Rouge wanted a society that is equal according to them. We still live and we are haunted with the legacy of the Khmer Rouge, which is the culture of impunity that continues to exist in Cambodia today. It is for this reason that we have started a campaign, worldwide campaign, a campaign to end impunity in Cambodia by seeking justice for cases, for the executions, for the killings that are organized, that are backed by the state. Among those cases of state-backed killings are the killings of Chea, a very famous trade union leader, Bisep Pilaka, a ballet dancer, of Khmer, an independent analyst, of Chutvuti, a well-known environmentalist, of Venerable Sun Bunthun, who was advocating for the monks to have the right to vote, including workers who demanded fair wages. The campaign will also advocate for governments that are members of the United Nations to put pressure on the government of Cambodia to conduct independent investigations by using universal tools such as the UN Protocol for Independent Investigation. The campaign will also advocate for governments that believe and want to protect universal human rights to impose sanctions on the leaders of the government of Cambodia who are implicated in these state-backed extrajudicial killings. We ask you to be with us, to support us, to be part of a campaign to end the culture of impunity in Cambodia and to find justice for those who have been waiting for justice for their loved ones killed by the state. There cannot be real peace unless there is justice. There cannot be justice unless there is independent investigation. And then the take those cases to an independent justice system. Join us by signing on this petition. Thank you.
យើងរួមគ្នាបញ្ចប់នីតិរដ្ឋភាពដើម្បីយុត្តិធម៌នៅកម្ពុជា
Thank you and welcome back, and thank you for joining our show. This is Khmer Youth Voices for Justice, part of the CNRP America live show today. Our topic for today is Stop AAPI Hate. AAPI stands for Asian American Pacific Islander. We have 3 wonderful youth with us today, but before we start, I just check change.org. Ending impunity for justice in Cambodia. So far we have over 70,800 signatures, so please help to support, make it to 71,000. Hopefully by the end of the day we get to 71,000 signatures, sorry about that. And yes, your support is very important. Your support is vital for the campaign of ending impunity for justice in Cambodia. Thank you. Let me bring out my guests. I have 3 wonderful guests. I have Amy Gia. She is brand new to our show. Let me bring her out. Amy,
Hello.
how are you?
Everybody? I'm good. How are you, Linda?
I'm good, thank you. Since you are new to our show, can you introduce yourself and let our audience know who you are?
Yes, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So yes, my name is Amy. I live in New York City now. I'm originally from Massachusetts. That's where my family is. A little about myself. I have a bachelor's in speech from the University of Connecticut and a master's in public administration and public policy from the Mark School of International and Public Affairs. That school is part of Baruch College, which is a city university of New York, which is why I ended up in New York City. I currently serve as a program officer and small business advisor for a community development financial institution called the Low Income Investment Fund. I lead our early care and education team here in New York, so I do a lot of grant making and business supports for childcare providers, and we do a lot of advocating for stronger childcare policies. So yeah, and then in addition to that, I'm also a co-founder and chief strategy officer for an organization in Maine called the Unified Asian Communities, and we just do a lot of local work to support the Asian community in Maine. So the most recent thing we did was organize a vigil for the victims of Atlanta and a hate crime victim in Portland, Maine. So, and we supported that victim with a fundraiser and raised a lot of money to help them get through their ordeal. So I'm very happy to be here. Great to meet you, and I'm looking forward to the show.
Thank you, Amy, for being here. Our second guest, her name is Bossiba Thit. She's been here before, but let me introduce her. How are you?
So I'm good. My name is Bossiba Thit. I'm 16 years old. I'm from North Carolina, and I am a model. I am an entrepreneur, and I also make my own art. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for, not many high school kids want to be on our show, but you do, and I thank you for that.
Yep,
thank you. Our last guest is Samady. He's the only male voice for today. I know Amy and Bossiba is coming, and I myself come from a strong woman background. So thank you, Samady, for being here and voicing your opinion today.
Yeah, well, no problem.
Introduce yourself.
Well, I've been here often. My name is Samady, and I am college student, 3rd year. And I just like to keep up with the current politics in our country and in the U.S. And yeah, that's it. Since it's COVID, I don't have anything interesting to do besides school.
Oh, that's plenty. Thank you, Samady.
Yeah, well.
Let me put all three guests. So we have a full house today. Thank you, ladies, and thank you, Samady. Like I said, thank you for being the voice for the man today. Welcome all guests. We are going to be talking about Stop AAPI Hate. It's been going on. I mean, it only amplified right now because it's in the news, but it, let me see, it's been going on for a while. Let's just start a year ago when COVID-19 started. And from President number 45, he keep talking, he's calling it as China virus. He's also calling it as what, Kung flu. So that just and nobody say anything, and he keep mentioning it, keep saying it, and at the same time, the Asian community or Pacific Islander being attacked, and nobody. It's not brought up. It's not because at the same time was Black Lives Matter was going on, and at the so because we're not white or we're not black, what we call ourselves yellow skin color, it's not brought up to the public. I do have a video if for our audience who not in America or not in Canada who doesn't know what's going on. Why are we talking about this? Let me find the video. Let me bring it up. I believe it's one of them.
Hold up. Let me call you back.
That is about a young man that basically attacked on the street. And lately it's not a young man, it's elderly, meaning our grandparent, our parent, and people just walking, walking like a man who walking in San Francisco got attacked. And that's just one of the current. And 2 weeks ago, there's a shooting in Atlanta. And that's like, what, 6 Asian women that passed away. And that just, and I'm sending condolence and our thoughts and prayer to the family, to the victim family. And at the same time, we shouldn't be up to that point for us to talk about. We shouldn't be at that point. It should have brought up, it should have stopped when the word China virus come out, that word coming out, and now it just amplify on the Asian community that is facing discriminations. And we're here to talk about what we should do to ensure equality and what we can do. And also we're going to share our experience on who we are and what our daily life as an Asian American feel like. Let me see. Samady and Bossiba, you are younger than Amy and I. How do you feel when you hear about our grandparent, our parent, like people who look like us being attacked? How do you guys feel?
Well, it makes me really upset because it's just, they don't do anything to anyone. They're just minding their own business, trying to make a living here in America, where they're not in a new country, basically. And it's just, there's a lot of pressure, and they have to get used to this whole new environment, and it's a lot for them. And so it makes me really upset to see all of these attacks happening, and the fact that it's like it just keeps happening, it keeps rising, and people are just normalizing it at this point, and I don't think that's right at all. So yeah.
You were born here, right, Bossiba?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your parents, where they come from, and because you and I look alike, so our parent must have. So tell me something about your parents.
So my parents, my father, he actually he came here to start a whole new family, to get a new job, learn a new language. He had to leave his own country to build a new life here. He had to leave behind his family, and just he had to leave behind the war, everything, a whole genocide happening back in Cambodia. It was a lot. It's a lot of trauma, and to come here in America and to have to rebuild everything, start everything on your own, it's so scary. And then on top of that, having to deal with racism and being harassed and being looked at in a different way, it's just a lot. And I think that this new generation, we have to look out for each other and to keep raising awareness too. So, yeah.
Thank you. Let me bring Samady. Samady, how do you feel when you see the video like that? When you're a kid, you go to school, you out there talking to people, talking to your own youth. How do you feel about people that look like you being attacked on the street like that?
Well, I feel like American has been suffered from a disease, incurable disease, known as racism. And we have the Black Lives Matter, and now the Asian hate out of nowhere because due to COVID. And I feel like America is supposed to be a free country where everyone can achieve American dream without being discriminated. And this should never happen in first place. Also, I feel like the person who kind of ignite the fire is the previous president by saying Wuhan disease, Chinese disease, and for those rural American who did not have educations on a higher level, they believe that when you think of China, you think of Asian. So you just think of everyone that has that look Asian, has small eyes, and so on. So those supporter, like those people that is not educated, they just attack people who look alike, basically, who look Asian. And so I believe this is not the right way, because during this pandemic we're supposed to be united and stand as one instead of having the killing spree going on against Black people, Asian people, and so on. So we need to unite as one and stop racism in the U.S. and cure this disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Samady. Thank you. Let me put Amy back. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
You were born here. What do
Yes.
you feel when you see people look like your parent, look like your grandparent, look like your uncle being attacked? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I feel angry. Like Bossiba said, they're not doing anything but living their own lives. To me, I am thinking these are folks who've survived the worst of humanity already. Like, they had to go through a war. They survived a genocide. They were in concentration camps and labor camps and refugee camps. And we thought that we were going to find refuge and safety on these shores. And I feel like, we never got the full chance to achieve that. And I think that we can see that in a lot of different ways, not just, the violence. Racism works in a lot of really different ways. It's subtle sometimes, and it really seeps into your psyche, and it really affects the way you think about yourself. So I am angry that we have been scapegoated and targeted just because there was a president who could hardly understand anything, let alone policy, let alone foreign policy or history. So here he is making these grand connections. And to Samady's point, there are a lot of folks who just didn't think to dig deeper. And they saw the leader of the free world saying China virus and Kung flu. And, that perpetuated anti-Asian sentiments and fueled this hateful, racist, xenophobic environment that we are still kind of in right now. So I feel angry and I feel sad. I live in New York City, so I'm a little bit further away from my parents. And I feel a little helpless sometimes. And I think about them a lot when my dad still goes out to work every day. You know, my mom used to go to the grocery store, and I'm thinking about my grandma, who goes on walks in the morning in her neighborhood. And so it's just been sad and scary. And as an Asian woman, because Asian women have been targeted as well in New York City, it's hard sometimes just to feel confident enough to go outside. So a whole lot of emotions. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm scared. I'm also defiant as well. So it's a mixed bag.
Oh, well, thank you, Amy. You know what? Your uncle introduced me to you, but I'm gonna ask you to talk about your parent. I know you're very close to your parent.
Yes.
I watch YouTube that you choose to go to school so that way you be close to them. So tell us something about a little bit about your parent.
Oh, yeah. I love my parents so much. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I don't know if they're watching right now, but if you are, hi, I miss you. I love you. My mom and dad came to the United States in 1981. They came from a refugee camp, Khao Idang, in Thailand. And, you know, they survived a lot. My mom's from the capital city. She's from Phnom Penh. My dad's from a small rural village. And so it's interesting also just the way I grew up speaking Khmer, because I think I mix both the city accent and the country accent. So I sound really, really weird when I try to speak Cambodian. But either way, they're just great. You know, my dad loves the Patriots. My mom is an amazing cook. They're amazing grandparents. They love their grandson to death. They're just wonderful, sweet people. I miss them a lot, and I'll be able to see them this summer. You know, we're getting our vaccine, so it's going to be safe, and I'll be able to hug them and not be scared. But yeah, they came here with hardly anything, right? They came here with the clothes on their back and my oldest brother. So they also had a newborn baby when they got here. So my dad immediately started working, and he just had to provide for his family. I mean, like Bossiba said, they came here for a whole new life with all this trauma that nobody ever addressed and nobody ever helped them work through. So they just put their heads down and they worked. I mean, they needed to provide for their families. And my parents did everything they could to give us the best life that they could. You know, they even moved us to the town next door to kind of get into a better school system, you know, be around like better people, you know, that kind of thing. So they sacrificed so much just so that I could go to college and live in New York City. So I owe everything to them.
Thank you, Amy. The reason why I asked Bossiba and Amy about their parent, because I want our audience who, if they're not Cambodian, I want them to have a picture of us. Like, this is a normal people. I mean, normal daughter of the refugee. And we contribute to the society, and that's why we're talking about, because it's people who look like us, people that get hurt right now, that's looking like us, that we contribute, our parents contribute to society, but at the same time, we being attacked, and the media is not talking about it. You only hear about it this couple months because it amplified it. But a year ago, when the virus just started, nobody talking about it. I mean, they're talking about China virus, they're talking about Kung flu, and people just brush it off, and it's like, no. The problem with that is your face and our face. Nobody can tell we are Cambodian. Nobody can tell that we like Chinese. And at the same time, they're looking at us, oh, we are the China virus, we are the Kung flu. But it's different kind of Asian, and we understand that. But at the same time, that we are the one that got attacked. We the one that the face of that number 45 made fun of. That's us. So let me see. Let me have Samady start. Samady, do you recall or experience a hate speech toward you, or hate acts toward you that you can share with our audience? I can't hear you, Samady.
There we go. I was muted. So
Okay.
I mean, at school, when I first came here in 2009, like when I was small, really small, during my English learning stage, because as you know, in Cambodia, even though I went to private English school, it's still different accent. People like asking me like, like where you come from and so on. Like they thought I was coming from China, even though that time I tried to explain to them that I was Cambodian. But you know, kid, they don't know where Cambodia is. It is a small country in Asia. So when you look Asian, they think you are China or Chinese. And also, yeah, I've been called like many names when I was small, but at the same time, during that time I was a kid. I don't understand that America suffered from racism, the disease known as racism. So I think it was just a joke, like joking. But as I grew older and learning about American history and the racism date back hundreds of years in America, I learned that well, this is not a joke. They don't joke around with me. They just say this mean thing to me just to make them feel like superior, like they own this country. So yes, and also they've been asking the most common question, like do you eat dog and stuff like that. Even though like during that time, like I was small, like when I think like eating dogs, like I'm thinking like Vietnamese, you know, like how they eat like dogs and stuff. So I thought it was normal in America. But now as I grew older, I know it was a joke to Asian people. So yes, now I understand. But as I move on and go to college, I never experienced any racism because everyone is educated. It's only kids and the older generations who doesn't have any education or learning about the history of the U.S. And yeah, so that's my opinion.
No, thank you, Samady. How about Bossiba? Have you ever spoken out or experienced the hatred toward you, the racist toward you?
Yeah, my experience was similar to Samady's too. In middle school, I dealt with a lot of like hate speech, and people ask me, "Do I eat this and that?" And when I would bring like Khmer food to lunch in middle school, people would be like, "Ew, what's that smell? Why does that smell so nasty?" And then they would always like joke about it, make fun of how like my food would stink or like the clothes that I'm wearing. And they would talk about my eyes and, you know, just everything, the whole stereotypical. Yeah. So, and I also dealt with like people like harassing me and bullying me in middle school, and it was really, really bad. Um, and I think that I don't know. It was a lot for me to handle in middle school because I felt like really out of place, and I was just trying to fit in with everyone. And yeah, um, I tried to talk about it a lot to like my family and friends, but they're all just like, yeah, that happens. It's normal, and you just need to suck it up and move on. But I think now is the time to speak up. It's either now or never. Like history is just going to repeat itself, and so yeah.
Thank you. Yes, that's the reason why we talk about it. And any kid, doesn't matter which color they are, they shouldn't be feeling that way because Amy gonna have kids. I have my kid. You're gonna Bossiba, you're gonna have a kid in the future. Somebody gonna have a kid in the future. We should never have our kid going through that experience, especially our kid that born in America. It shouldn't be having that. It's no excuse. Let me have Amy. Can you share your experience, if either through school or through work? How
Sure.
have you ever experienced hatred?
Yeah, so I think the most notable thing that I can remember is that when I was in, I don't know, maybe like first grade, like I was really little, maybe 6 or 7 years old. I used to be able to walk to and from my elementary school to home. And there was one day that I was followed home by a couple of boys. I think they were a little bit older than me. And they followed me home and called me a bunch of like racial slurs. And, you know, when you're a kid, you don't know what those words mean, but you can tell that it's not nice. And you can tell that these kids are making fun of you. And, you know, I didn't have to walk very far, but it was like kind of a scary walk home. So I got home, I told my older brothers and my cousins, and I don't know what they went and did. But after that, I remember seeing my dad hose the house down because I believe those same kids egged our house and spray painted on our house. I don't know what they wrote. I think we can imagine the kinds of words that they wrote, but they egged the house. And I remember that. And I think it was at that moment that I really realized, like, wow, am I that different from everybody else in my school? And I think what that really did for me, and this kind of really set the stage for a lot of my identity development, was that I associated being Asian with it being a bad thing. Like, if I'm Asian, these bad people will follow me home and make fun of me. So it was really hard for me to kind of accept my identity growing up, because I was like, if I fully accept it, that opens me up to like hatred and discrimination. And so, like Bossiba said, I just wanted to fit in. So, you know, I would lean into my Asian identity as long as it gained acceptance from my white peers. Like, I would lean into the parts that they liked, and then most of the other parts that they didn't like, I would shy away from, right? So I think a lot of the things I leaned into, though, are actually pretty racist, because if I think back on it now as an adult who's learned a lot and is able to put a lot of concepts and language back to those situations, where back then I was a kid, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, the things I leaned into, the positive stereotypes of Asians that I leaned into were like the overachiever, the star athlete, or the class president. Like, those are things that I did and that made me seem accepted. At the same time, I also kind of just accepted this sexualization and fetishization of myself, because I thought that was like, oh, people are accepting me and they like me. So, you know, I had to deal with a lot of, we love you a long time. Are you going to give me a happy ending? You know, crude comments about me when I'm a teenage girl, because as Asian women, we're hypersexualized and fetishized a lot in this country, and people think that we're submissive and obedient, and like that's what they want in a female partner. So they feel that dominance over you, and when you're young, you don't really know. And yeah, and there was also a time when I was younger that a classmate's mom would always call me Ling Ling, and that is not my name. My name is Amy, and it's not even my Asian name. Like, my parents call me Lee or Mion. Like, they don't call me, no one has ever called me Ling Ling. Now, to this day, I don't know if she called me that because she thought it was funny, or if she called me that because her son may have told her that that was my name. And maybe it was a joke between him and his friends that they all convinced his mom to call me that. And I never said anything about it. I laughed it off, because when you're in those situations, you're like, I don't want to be seen as dramatic. I don't want to be seen as oversensitive. So you laugh everything off, and you build that tough skin that your parents tell you to do, right? They're like, you need to succeed. Don't worry about them. You've got a test in the morning. Like, you've got to get through school. You know what I mean? So like, that's what you do. You just put your blinders on, and you just like build a thick skin. You try to let it like not get under your skin, but you don't even realize how much it really lives in your brain.
Yes, we all experienced that. We all heard about the Ling Ling. We all heard it. The most I heard, let me share experience, like, you know, go get back on the boat, go back home by on the boat. It's like, this is my home. Right. I'm not sure, like, you were born here. I wasn't born here, but I always tell them I didn't come here by boat. I was on a plane. So and also the classics one that I always feel it's racist, when people looking at my face and they asking me, do you speak English? What make you think that I don't speak English? We all, I mean, beside Bossiba, we all go to college. We all get our college education. We go to work. We contribute to the society. Why would you look at me and ask me if I speak English? That just, to me, it's racist, because that just, it's like they asking you, Amy, where you come from? Right. Or Bossiba, where do you come from?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and if Bossiba says North Carolina, they say, no, really, where are you from?
Yeah, where are you from?
You're not satisfied with the truth, because you already had a preconceived notion of what you thought the answer was going to be. So.
Well, yes. What do you think so now we're talking about it, and people are more aware of that. There's a certain question that they ask us, like, do you speak English? Where you come from? That's actually, and not accepting our answer. Like, I speak English. I live here. I've been here forever. I pay my taxes every year. I
Yeah.
contribute to the society. What make you think that I don't speak English? And what make you think that you know English than I am? And
Yeah.
that's when you actually step back and you think about it. Like, yeah, that is racist. You don't go up to a black person and you ask, do you speak English? Do they do that? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's being seen as the perpetual foreigner, no
Yes,
matter what.
exactly. And that need to stop, because many like you and Bossiba, you born here, shouldn't be asked. It should be treating us equally. And I know, Amy, you are passionate about the topic. You also there's such thing is called an Asian myth.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you share with us and with Samady and Bossiba what is an Asian myth?
Sure. I am really excited to talk about this. So thank you for the question, Linda. The model minority myth is what it's called. And there's this common misconception out there that Asians have it pretty good, that we are all and economically well off, and that we do not experience racism, and we definitely don't experience it the way that Black, Latino, and Indigenous people do in this country. The model minority myth pits our group against all of the other groups, and it only serves to benefit white supremacy and whiteness. It forces us to disparage other ethnic groups and oppressed groups by thinking that they are lazier or that they want more handouts, and this is not true. This is harmful rhetoric. So this myth has a lot of layers to it, and we don't have all night, but I'll try to be quick. I'd love to dive in because I think it's a really important thing for us to talk about. So first, the model minority myth assumes that all Asians are East Asians. And it pushes the belief that Asians have a close proximity to whiteness. And many people in America think only of East Asians when they think of Asian people. And oftentimes that means that they see us as like doctors, engineers, and lawyers. And this is misleading. And it erases the struggles of many, many, many Asian communities. I mean, Asia is the largest continent on the planet. It specifically doesn't address the Southeast, South, Central, and West Asians. It's not true for all of us. We're not all doctors and lawyers. Many of us came to this country as refugees and who've suffered a lot of trauma and have been living in areas of the country that suffer from a lot of poverty. And so economic mobility is a lot harder for refugees who resettled into urban areas like New York City or San Francisco. And so by grouping all of us into one broad group and treating us as a monolith, you risk the danger of erasing many of our struggles. And this further normalizes the racism and discrimination that we face on both individual and systemic levels. And it makes invisible the economic inequalities and violence that we still face as Asian American Pacific Islanders. And the myth was created in the 60s when Black and Asian groups were uniting to fight oppression together. People didn't like that. People didn't like that our groups were getting together to fight against white supremacy. So to stop that from happening, white folks created this idea and the term to create a wedge between our groups. And this was around the time, you had mentioned this earlier, Linda, this was around the time where immigration law reforms lifted the ban of Asian immigrants to the US, but the new requirements limited visas to only highly educated and highly skilled individuals. So this furthers that false stereotype that we're all like super, super smart and we're all really, really rich, which is so not true. And it also widened the income inequality between AAPI groups, which totally skews AAPI statistics when we're clumped together as one large group. And I'm sorry, I'll be done soon, but
no, it's okay.
The myth, it credits the success of Asian immigrants to strong family values, a good work ethic, which sounds great. And being like polite and law-abiding citizens, and all of that sounds great. But when you put a microscope to it, you realize that it was specifically designed to discredit Black struggles, and it implies that Black people need to have better family values and a stronger work ethic, which erases the centuries of enslavement, racism, and oppression that makes economic mobility so difficult to attain. So the myth also promotes more anti-Blackness in our Asian communities, which further divides our groups. And before I end, I just also want to say that it's also common for Asians themselves to internalize this myth, which is also very damaging. So it promotes anti-Blackness and it creates a sense of superiority over other racial and ethnic groups. And it damages our psyche and the way that we navigate our identities as Asians living in America. So it's a lot, but I'm really happy to be having the conversation about the model minority myth because I think I've faced a lot of that in my life. I think a lot of people would say things like, oh, we're so lucky to have your family here. And I was like, what's the difference between my family, who's here as refugees, they just happened to come in the 80s, versus the families who are coming from Central America, who are also looking for a new life because their countries are dangerous and they're leaving their homes to come attain the American dream. So what's the difference between my family and their family? I don't think that, so I think that's something that we really need to think about, the way that people like to put Asians on a pedestal to say, hey, all other non-white groups, be more like them. And then that makes all the other groups not like Asians because we are so technically close to white people, but we will never be part of that group. So it's a really damaging myth. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about it.
Oh, no, thank you for being here and thank you for talking about it because that's very important. Asian work minimum wage as well, but you don't hear about that.
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
hear about that. You don't hear about Asian. Oh, you always hear Asian is so smart. Asians have so much money, but at the
Right.
same time, at the company level, Asian never go up to director or upper management. And that's also a myth as well. It's
Yes, it's the bamboo ceiling. That's where we get trapped, right? There's a glass ceiling for women. There's a bamboo ceiling for Asians. And you touched on it. Asians have one of the highest unemployment rates in America right now, especially after COVID. Because if you think about the jobs that we have, a lot of it is small businesses, restaurants, nail salons, massage parlors, or just smaller businesses that we have. And the racism, because everyone thought that coronavirus came from China, people stopped going to Chinatown. People stopped going to Asian-owned businesses. And it's been really, really hard for Asian business owners to get back. So,
yes.
yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Let put Samady and Bossiba back. Samady, in the I guess over 2 weeks ago, that's a shooting in Atlanta areas. I have no doubt that the shooting is, it's basically racist hate toward Asians American, and no matter what they say, that I'm feeling that is people actually coming to the idea that is racist, that is against Asians. How do you feel about that shooting when you hear about it?
Well, I feel anger recalling the discriminations and injustice toward Asian people all over the globe, especially in the U.S. As you said, there have been numerous incidents of anti-Asian violence since the start of COVID-19, and I think I see it from somewhere like on the news. I think it's CNN. It reported that the hate crime against Asian has the highest peak in 2020 due to COVID.
Yes.
It's increased by 150% in 2020 alone. And recently, there has been people who are just walking in the street of New York. The 45-year-old lady who went on a walk, and a guy walked up to her and pushed on the ground, stomped on her face, and we see two people, security, inside the store, seeing the doorman see the incident and do nothing. They just stand there and watch, and they don't engage in any activity to help the woman out. They just wait until the guy stomp her a couple times, walk away, and then still didn't go help her. So I believe it's like anger and sad at the same time. So, and in Atlanta, you see a guy who just go to different nail salon and killing people on a killing spree because he believed that Asian people is the reason that COVID exists. So uh, I'm just speechless. I don't have anything to add on to that. So
Thank
yes.
you, Samady. How about you, Bossiba? Do you feel that the shooting in Atlanta is race motivated?
Yes, it's definitely targeted right at Asians. It's obvious because when you look back at it and you see apparently the person who did the shooting, they were having a bad day, apparently. Yeah, and if you're having a bad day, you don't just go out and kill a specific group of people. And apparently, the cop that was supposed to take care of all of this, he apparently he was like saying something about the coronavirus, about how he blames it on Asian people. And yeah, I have a bunch of mixed emotions about this. So yeah. And also, there was this one incident that happened. I forgot where it was from, but this guy, his car got hijacked, and two teenagers around my age hijacked the car, and he ran into a building and he died right away. And yeah, it's terrible.
Many of these incidents, I'm not surprised that it happened, but I'm surprised the most is people just stand there and watch. It's like the one that Samady said, that's in front of, I believe, a like a very expensive. I'm not sure it's luxury apartment or not, but it's a luxury apartment, and the doorman, and this is what a doorman, two of them, and that's not just, there's many of them just stand there and watch, and that just broke my heart. It's cruelty. I was taught to, speak up when you see something unfairly, when you see someone fall on the street, you go help them. This is the lady's not just fall, she got her head stomped on so many times, and that's what broke my heart. It's just people just willing to stand there and watch and not doing anything, and they probably not doing anything because you know what, we look different than them, and that's just that. Amy, what do you feel about the Atlanta shooting? Do you think it's racially motivated, or you just randomly having somebody who have a bad day, like Bossiba said?
Absolutely, it was racially motivated and it was gender motivated. I think I'm really upset about the other narrative, right? The bad day narrative. I'm also really upset at the media and or people who are defending a mass murderer. People are quicker to defend a mass murderer than they are to defend Asian lives. Let's start there. But also they were trying to say that, he had an Asian fetish and he had these temptations that he needed to eliminate. That's what they said. We were temptations for him to eliminate. So I feel a lot of anger around that because that's disgusting. But also, I think that it's a lot easier for people to say that, like, oh, it's an individual problem. It's that guy. He had a lot of issues. It's just him, rather than face the fact that that man was standing at the intersection of what I think to be most of America's issues, which is like toxic masculinity, racism, misogyny, crazy unregulated gun laws. I think it's easier to buy a gun in Georgia than it is to vote in Georgia. So he's standing and xenophobia and like just white supremacy. And he felt like he had the right to take the lives of other people. He thought that he had the right to take the lives of women and people who were just working to put their kids through college, to support their families. One of the victims is a grandmother. Like, this is who this person did. Like, when I have a bad day, I come home and I pour myself a glass of wine. I don't go out and kill people with an automatic weapon. So I think what President number 45 did was also bring up to the surface a lot of the underlying racism that Asians in the United States have always been experiencing. And I think the incident that happened to the woman in New York City, which actually happened just a few blocks from my office, when I used to go to the office, it happened just a few blocks away from my office. That security guard going to shut the door seems to me to be like a metaphor of how America has always viewed our problems as not theirs, as off their shores. So they're going to close the door and they're going to act like they didn't see it. and they're going to keep on going. They're going to keep on walking. They're going to keep on scrolling while we are screaming like into the void. So I think that racism against us has always existed. It's always been normalized. And it feels new because of the media spotlight, although it's not new. However, I do think that this is a really great opportunity for us to just continue this conversation, because I think what would make it a lot easier for people is if we stopped talking about it, and if we stopped getting together as groups to talk about this kind of stuff, it would make their lives a lot easier. Well, if the media is going to shine a spotlight on us, then we're just going to keep talking, and we're going to keep on talking until things get better.
Yes, and correct. What happened in Atlanta brought open a can of worm. When he said when the guy said he had a bad day and stuff, there's 6 women, and I'm not sure about you, Amy, but you probably said it earlier. You and I been looked at as this exotic thing,
Yeah.
because we Asians, and there's a movie that amplify that say love you long time. I'm not. People heard that phrase because it's in the movie, and there's many other phrases that people talk, and that's what we've been object to. We walk on the street, that's how people looking at Asian women, as this exotic, this willing to do anything just to fulfill a person need. And that's what white supremacists feel like. I mean, us. I mean, I don't know how to put it, but that's how people looking at us, and people actually military went overseas, and that's how they see, and that's how the movie brought it over. So just no matter what education you get, what degree you get, you and I always been looking at, love you long time. And that need to change. The whole society need to change when they look at Asian women, and not just that one person who have a bad day in Atlanta areas. And the whole country the whole society need to stop looking at Asian women that way, and need to stop looking at Asians. It's good that we talk about it, but at the same time, we need to keep talking about it, because it will not solve any issue.
Mm-hmm.
I have to add on to that. Okay, so in a lot of films, you can see that most Asian women are always seen as like the nerdy type of woman, or like the one that's like submissive, or like, Asian women are just sexualized, and it's so normalized, and we're objectified, all of that. And it's just so disgusting to see, because you can see in a lot of films, like one of them, there were like these white men that were coming back from the Vietnam War, and they were like, sexualizing these Asian women and calling them names and all of that. I think it's just so nasty. And also, like the movie Crazy Rich Asians, that confirms the whole model minority myth, like you were saying, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we definitely need to share some like awareness on like Asians being in films and all that stuff. So yeah.
Definitely. Like, stop showing us just as stereotypes and start showing us as people, right? They do it to Asian men too. They emasculate Asian men and make them like nerds, and you know what I mean? You're either like a nerd or you're like a kung fu master, right? Like that's Asian men in movies. And then women are either like geishas or like the nerdy friend, like it's so. Stop perpetuating our stereotypes in movies and TV shows and show us as real, complex, full people.
Yeah, they make us seem like we're soft, especially Asian men. They make them seem like they're just super quiet and fragile. And, it's so annoying, and it's disgusting. So, yeah.
We talk about a lot of issues. We share a lot of our experience, what we see, let me start with Samady. What should be done about that? You as a youth, yes. What should the public be aware of? Because we all four speak from our experience, and it's our face. We pay taxes. We contribute to our society. We have educations. What does the outside world need to know about us? What can be done to prevent all these racist experience that we feel?
One is to speak out and keep making our voice heard, especially in the news media outlet. Instead of hatred, we should come as one and be united and helping hand for one another during this pandemic crisis. And these unethical acts of violence and hate should be condemned, and we should demand equal opportunity or treatment for Asian American across the U.S. And we are all suffering right now. No one wants this pandemic to happen, even us Asians. And our race has nothing to do with the spread of COVID virus, because we don't want any of this. And also, instead of staying quiet, we should speak up, like right now, I believe. And hopefully the news media outlet keep on spreading this hate crime toward Asians, and inform people so they can understand that Asian is doesn't always have the privilege like white people. We also come from, especially Cambodian, come from Khmer Rouge. Um, our race has been annihilated, half our populations, and most of us got lucky to be coming to United States. Our parents work hard for our educations, so we can become doctors, lawyers, and business owners, and so on, and have a college educations. So we are not far off from African American. We also have a difficult life, our parents especially. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Samady. Bossiba, can you what high school youth can do to to help prevent this from happening to anymore?
Well, for me, I've been using my social media platform and sharing posts. I've been having conversations with my non-Asian friends. We have these types of discussions, and I also think that we should help support small Asian businesses and just Asian businesses in general. And yeah, I keep spreading awareness, keep educating ourselves, our friends, our families, and speak out for one another. So yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you, Bossiba. How about you, Amy? What more can be done? I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface, but what can we do?
Right. Well, everything that somebody said and everything that Bossiba said. So everybody take notes, because I'm just only going to add on to what they said, because it was really great. So, well, like the anger is very real. There's a lot of anger and grief in our country right now because we're in the middle of a pandemic. We lost 500,000 people to this virus. People lost their jobs. People lost their homes. So that anger is real, but it had been manipulated. And these people have been like sorely misguided because the last administration scapegoated our people for a pandemic that they failed to manage. So I just want everyone to understand that, like somebody said, our race has nothing to do with the spread of a virus. That virus does not care how old you are, what gender you are, and what race you are. Like that virus did not care. And so in addition to Bossiba saying she's sharing information on social media and having those conversations, I would say education, right? And while it's not our responsibility as Asian people to educate non-Asian people, if you have the energy and the will, like Bossiba, to share information and resources to your networks about the history of racism against Asian Americans, about the model minority myth, about the recent hate crimes, you should do it. But I also ask non-Asian folks to please dig into the resources. There's a lot of resources out there for you. Just please take the time and the emotional labor, because it takes a lot out of us to have these conversations and to share our trauma with you while we're dealing with trauma at the same time. It's hard to experience racism, process trauma, grieve, and then educate people at the same time. So I would just ask people, non-Asian folks, if you want to support the Asian American Pacific Islander people in your life, in your family, take the time to do the emotional work and commit. This is like a day-to-day. This isn't like you read a book or you read an article and everything gets better. This is like every day, challenge yourself, challenge your biases, think about every situation. I have biases all the time. I always just have to catch them, right? I'm not perfect, but I think that everyone just really needs to try. Another thing I would say is that we need to empower our community with support and with resources. So there's so many amazing groups that are supporting AAPI communities out there. Find them, find the local ones in your town, in your state. Donate to them if you can. If you can't donate, listen, I know it's hard times for us financially. If you can't donate, share on your Instagram, on your Facebook, spread the word. And you know, people I think are really looking for ways to help right now, and you can just make it easier for them. Like I had a fundraiser for AAPI organizations. I just told people to Venmo me because that's easy for them, and then I got the money where it needed to go. So like if you can have yourself be a conduit for easy ways for people to give back, that's great. The last thing I would say to Samady's point is to speak up and report crimes if they happen. Hate crimes are underreported, especially by Asians in this country, because we typically just don't want any trouble, right? And we also come from authoritarian governments where when you did speak out against governments, bad things happen to you. So we come with that trauma in our bones and in our skin. So I think in this country, we need to, you know, stand up and speak up. If our elders won't do it, we have to do it. I have to do it. You know, like I'm not afraid to stand up for my family. So we need to demand to be counted. We need to demand accountability. But the last thing I would say is to that end is that I want justice for victims of hate crimes, but I do not support funding, putting more funds into police departments, and I don't want to increase policing in already criminalized communities. A couple of Black abolitionists said that we need to use our radical imaginations to come up with new structures of accountability beyond the system we are working to dismantle. So if we're working to dismantle white supremacy as a whole, our solutions can't be within the system of white supremacy. It needs to be bigger than that. And a journalist said, journalist Sam Liu said, it's easy to demand convictions and harsh punishments. It's a lot harder to address the root causes of racial violence and to commit to the real day-to-day work of collective healing. So that's where I want to leave it. We need to commit to day-to-day work for collective healing. No short-sighted solutions, no band-aids. Like we need to dig deep and we need to root this out of our society.
Well, thank you, Amy. You hit a couple really good points. I was going to add, I didn't hear from somebody, I didn't hear from Bossiba, but I heard it from you. Please report the crime, no matter how small, how large it is. That's how you get hurt, and that's how people hear you. If you we coming from authority, and our parents must have feel, you know, if you say something going to be bad happen. This is America. No matter what you say or not, bad thing will happen, but you need to report it. That's one of the problem is Asian community is under-reporting the crime, because we just say, oh, you know what, it's no big deal. We can go to the hospital and pay for ourselves. No, those are encouraging perpetrator. The crime need to be reported, and we cannot just brush it off under the rug and call it a day. It's not going to work anymore, because your children, my children, the future of America, which is the future of Asian descent American, gonna go to school and still feel like, gonna still ask the question, where you come from? Do you speak English? Mm-hmm. And it's so many generations already. You know, Amy, you said it, where you come from, and Bossiba, where you come from. And our kid and the future generation gonna still feel that they need to fit in. They shouldn't be feeling like that. They should go to school and concentrate on school instead of feeling like, oh, you know what, I don't fit in. I need to answer, you know, why China virus happened, you know, why Kung flu, or it should not be happening, because Asian community die of COVID-19. The same as American, same as white, same as other race. So it's equally the same. So we need to stop brushing the problem under the rug, and, you know, pull the rug, open the rug up, and just talk about it, report it, and, you know, amplify the issues. That's the only way to solve the issue.
I have more to add on to that.
Oh, come on, add it. It's okay, come on.
Back to what Amy said, well, I've noticed that in our like education system, you don't really see that many people, or you don't see in like the history books about them talking about like Asian history and stuff like that. They don't. The history books don't discuss enough information about Asian cultural backgrounds and all of that. They only talk about um like unrelated stuff basically. And I think that it's important to educate ourselves now, to start now and start digging deeper about the real, history. And I'm also going to try to use my platform more to create like art and stuff like that for okay, hold up. So I'm gonna keep trying to use my background like to help amplify our voices more. So yeah.
Thank you, Bossiba. Thank you. That's really good. Does Samady and Amy, you have anything to add before we end our show?
I have one list, but I would ask somebody to go if you have anything else to add.
I don't have anything to add.
I just wanted to go off what Bossiba said because I think it's so true that Asian American history is so neglected and ignored, and kind of something that we had talked about before, Linda. I think that many Americans forget what role Asians played in building this country. We're part of the nation's tapestry. We've been here since the 1800s, and we've been dealing with the constant othering and violence against our bodies ever since. So I wrote a quick checklist for people to Google once this is done. If anybody's listening and they want to learn a little bit more about the history of racism against Asians, I have a list for you, okay? The Los Angeles Chinese Massacre of 1871, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the Japanese internment camps from 1942 to 1946, and the murder of Vincent Chin in 1982. So anti-Asian sentiments have always underscored our lives here. And I just want people to really open their eyes and not look at us like caricatures, but look at us like people with deep roots and long histories that are complicated. So I just thank you so much for having me on today, and thank you everybody for everything. I learned a lot from you guys.
Well, thank you, Amy, for being here. We love you being here, and thank you, Samady. Thank you, Bossiba, for being here. We enjoy that. We should be, we should talk more often on, racism, because we all experience that, and that just it's on a personal level. It's not looking at somebody who experience it. We experience that, and that's why I want all three of you here too, so that way you can voice your opinion and also tell our audience. Amy and Bossiba, you born here, so that way like the kind of experience you experience, where that's going to be the next generation going to experience, and that's nobody should experience like that. Samady and I, we wasn't born here, but we here at an older age where people telling us to get back on the boat and go home. And but this is our home. So, thank you so much, all three of you, for being here today, and I appreciate and thank you so much. Thank you, our audience, for being here today. It's really a great conversation about basically racist in America. I hope to see you next week, and thank you so much.